This presentation provides a summary of the Office's report, Audits of 2 P3 projects in the Sea to Sky corridor. For a copy of the full report or further information, please visit our website at www.bcauditor.com. As the nonpartisan independent auditor of the Legislative Assembly, the Auditor General audits the government reporting entity. This consists of ministries, crown corporations, and other government organizations, such as universities, colleges, school districts, health authorities, and similar organizations that are controlled by or accountable to the provincial government. The Office of the Auditor General serves the people of British Columbia and their elected representatives by conducting independent audits and advising on how well government is managing its responsibilities and resources. Under the Auditor General Act, the Auditor General conducts and reports on both financial audits and performance or value for money audits. This Act also allows the Auditor General to follow up on any recommendations made in reports. The first of the two audits in this report examined the Sea to Sky Highway Improvement Project. The Sea to Sky Highway, or Highway 99, extends for 95 kilometers and it passes through coastal mountains and connects a number of communities between West Vancouver and Whistler. In June 2005, the province entered into a P3 agreement with a group of private companies called the Sea to Sky Highway Investment Limited Partnership. Under the agreement, the Sea to Sky Partnership agreed to design, build, and finance about 2/3 of the highway improvements. The Ministry is responsible for managing the remaining 1/3 of improvements. The partnership will also operate and maintain the entire highway for 25 years. In December 2005, 6 months after the P3 agreement was signed, the Ministry released a project report. The report was titled Achieving Value for Money Sea to Sky Highway Improvement Project and listed the Ministry's key project objectives. These included improved highway safety, improved reliability for users, enhanced highway capacity, and completion of the highway improvements on time and on budget. The Sea to Sky Partnership completed the major improvements to the highway in time for the 2010 Winter Games. They continue to maintain and operate the highway as per the P3 agreement. We carried out this audit to determine whether the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure effectively transferred design and construction risk to the private sector partners, developed appropriate contract governance and management methods, and is effectively managing the Sea to Sky Highway Concession Agreement, and is able to demonstrate that it is achieving its key objectives for the project, namely enhanced highway safety, reliability, and capacity. In regards to our first criteria, we concluded that the design and construction risks of the project were effectively allocated between the province and the private sector partners. To determine this, we examined whether the project was completed to the specifications of the P3 agreement and consistent with any approved change orders. We found that the private sector partners had completed the project on time. We also found that the Ministry had appropriately managed design and construction risks in accordance with the risk allocation set out in its 2005 report and within the terms of the contract. Finally, we found the project's construction phase to be on budget, with final costs being consistent with what the Ministry planned for the project and within the scope of approved changes. In regards to our second criteria, we concluded that the concession agreement, with a few exceptions, has been effectively managed. We observed that the Ministry was providing adequate resourcing, including dedicated contract management staff, relevant training, and external consultants to support internal expertise. We also observed a good working relationship between Ministry staff and the private sector partners and strong contract mechanisms to support good highway management. However, we did note 3 areas for improvement, which will be discussed in the recommendations section. As a result of this audit, we have 5 recommendations. The first is for the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure to review and approve all changes in the P3 ownership structure as allowed under the concession agreement for the remaining life of the project agreement. During 2010, the private sector partner ownership changed. We found the Ministry did not conduct a detailed analysis of this sale, something it is able to do under the terms of the concession agreement. Because government is a long-term partner in any P3 arrangement, contract managers need to ensure government's best interests are reflected in any proposed ownership change. Our second recommendation is for the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure to ensure that all key project documents are identified and accessible for the full term of the concession agreement. The Ministry was unable to provide us with some key construction documents, such as segment completion sign-offs. Given the long-term nature of the concession agreement and the high likelihood of turnover in key staff over the life of the contract, it is important that the project documentation be well managed and maintained. Without such documentation, the Ministry risks being at a disadvantage when managing and negotiating with its private sector partners. Our third recommendation is for the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure to review the Sea to Sky Highway Concession Agreement and all other existing P3 contracts to assess the financial impacts of switching from the PST to the HST and recover any overpayments made. During this audit, we found an issue relating to the possible overpayment of sales tax. When the province introduced the HST in July 2010, the Ministry did not adjust contract payments for any PST included in the annual operations and maintenance costs. Instead, it applied the HST to the PST inclusive payments. The Ministry did not analyze the monetary impact of the tax change, resulting in the risk that it is now paying both taxes to its private sector partners. Our final two recommendations, number 4 and 5, are in response to our audit work on accountability for key objectives. We found that the Ministry does not know if it is meeting its key objectives for the Sea to Sky Highway Improvement Project because it is not measuring, monitoring, or reporting on them. Our fourth recommendation, then, is for the Ministry to measure and monitor the achievement of its main objectives for the project. And our final recommendation is for the Ministry to report publicly on how well it is achieving its value for money and risk transfer objectives outlined in the concession agreement. By measuring, monitoring, and publicly reporting on key project objectives, the Ministry can demonstrate whether the project is achieving the expected value for money. This information can also help assess the effectiveness of the P3 approach for future highway procurements. The second audit in this report examined the Britannia Mine Water Treatment Plant project located at Britannia Beach about 50 kilometers north of Vancouver on the Sea to Sky Highway. This former copper mine operated from the early 1900s until 1974. At its peak, it was the largest producer of copper in the British Empire. Mining operations exposed the naturally occurring underground sulfides to air and water. The ensuing chemical reaction causes concentrated acidic metal-contaminated water called acid rock drainage to form. Before the province took action in 2005, water flowed untreated through the mine and into local waterways and Howe Sound. Led by the Ministry of Forests, Lands and Natural Resource Operations, the province initiated the Britannia Mine Remediation Project with the primary goal to reduce the site's environmental impacts. The Britannia Mine Water Treatment Plant is a key component of this project. In 2005, the province entered into a P3 agreement with EPCOR Britannia Water Incorporated, the successful bidder on a contract to build and operate the water treatment plant. This is the only provincial government project to date where the treatment of contaminated water is managed through a P3. EPCOR's contract covers an initial 20 years of water treatment, from 2005 to 2025. However, to manage the ongoing acid rock drainage problem, government will need to continue operating the water treatment plant for as long as groundwater and surface water continue to flow through the mine or until other technologies are implemented to treat the water. The Ministry of Environment is the regulator of the water treatment plant. It issued a discharge permit stating the acceptable levels of metal concentrations that can be in the water before it is released into Howe Sound. The province set these levels in consultation with the federal government, since both jurisdictions have legal authority concerning water pollution. We carried out this audit to assess whether the provincial government's objectives for the Britannia Mine Water Treatment Plant project public-private partnership are being met. To do this, we sought to answer two questions. Did the construction of the treatment plant meet the government's objectives? Are the government's financial and environmental objectives being met? The focus of our audit was on the Britannia Mine Water Treatment Plant Project P3. However, because the government is monitoring the long-term effectiveness of the plant by measuring environmental changes resulting from the Britannia Mine Remediation Project, it was also necessary to review the progress of the broader remediation work. In regards to our first criteria, we concluded that the construction of the plant met government objectives. To determine this, we assessed whether EPCOR met the specifications, costs, and timelines contained in the project agreement. Overall, we found that design and construction risks were appropriately managed and consistent with the risk allocations, and that EPCOR met all requirements under the P3 agreement, and even started treating water 2 months earlier than expected. In regards to our second criteria, we concluded that the government's financial and environmental objectives with the plant are substantially being met. The Ministry is doing a good job of managing the P3 contract through the implementation of management processes. We found the actual costs of operating the water treatment plant to be close to what was budgeted for the project, and the plant is meeting the water quality requirements and staying within the level of metals stated in the permit issued by the Ministry of Environment. However, we did note 3 areas for improvement and developed recommendations to help government address these. Our first recommendation is that the Ministry of Forest, Lands and Natural Resource Operations obtain periodic independent verifications of EPCOR's water quality testing results over the remaining life of the project agreement. We expected the Ministry to have a process for verifying the results of EPCOR's water quality testing. Instead, we found that the Ministry relies on EPCOR's self-reported results. This presents a risk of overpayments because EPCOR is paying according to the volume of water it processes and its ability to meet the water quality requirements. The project agreement includes a clause providing the government with broad rights to conduct audits and verify results, but these provisions have never been exercised by the Ministry. Our second recommendation is that each ministry develop and use a clear and concise method of maintaining records of key decisions about, interpretations of, and amendments to the Britannia Mine Water Treatment Plant Project Agreement and permits. We found that both ministries have substantial project records. However, they have not always documented their key decisions about and changes to the project agreements and permits. It is important to maintain a history of key decisions with P3 contracts because of their long-term nature. During the life of P3 agreements, key staff often move on to other work or leave the organization. This makes retention of key documentation essential to supporting future team members. In addition, the government risks being at a disadvantage when managing or negotiating with its private sector partners if it does not maintain a history of key interpretations and decisions regarding these agreements. Our third recommendation is that ministries work together to develop long-term plans and timelines for meeting their goal of closure of the contaminated site. For the last 3 years, the Ministry of Forests, Lands and Natural Resource Operations has prepared annual project work plans to guide the remediation efforts. However, we found that neither that ministry nor the Ministry of Environment have developed longer-term plans and timelines for the broader remediation project. Long-term planning would allow the Ministry of Forests, Lands and Natural Resource Operations to demonstrate how it will work towards the long-term goal of meeting the closure requirements of the Act. Looking ahead, we will be following up with the Ministry's implementation of our recommendations in our April 2013 follow-up report. As well, the Office plans to conduct further performance audit work on the effectiveness of public-private partnerships, contract management, and performance reporting within the public service. That concludes our summary of this report. To read this report and our other publications or for more information about our office, please visit our website at www.bcauditor.com. The Office of the Auditor General encourages your feedback on this report as well as your suggestions for further audits. We look forward to hearing from you.